Hey guys, welcome to the vlog. I'm doing a totally political video again today, but don't worry, with my next video I'll be back to my usual happy-go-lucky content, so don't worry, this isn't a permanent new direction for me, but I'm just a little bit freaked out by the world's current state of affairs. Today I'm going to be talking about the recent Defund the Police movement. I have to admit, at first when I was reading about this movement, I was a little bit skeptical. I was feeling like, are you guys really sure it's a good idea to defund the police? But the more I looked into it, the more I started to understand what was going on. I originally thought they just meant, take all of the police's funding away. It's not what they mean. It's more so a call for communities to re-examine their own budgets and re-examine where the money's going and sort of reevaluate what share of that the police deserves to get, and also reevaluate what role the police should serve in each community, and that maybe the purpose of a police force has to be re-examined in light of these terrible I was going to say recent events, but it's not just recently that the police have overstepped their bounds. It's a systematic problem. It always has been, and the George Floyd incident was sort of the last straw. The George Floyd murder, excuse me. I don't want to pass it off as a little incident because it was cold-blooded murder if you watch the video. Anyway, but it's the last straw in what has been a systematic problem for a long time. So today I'm actually going to share with you guys two of my own encounters with police in which I felt that the police officer was in the wrong. And then after I share these stories with you, I'm going to sort of try to equate, I'm going to try to examine how my own white privilege entered into these interactions. I had honestly previously never put a great deal of thought into it, but the more I think about it, the more sort of disturbed I am by all of this. So anyway, the first of these two encounters happened a couple of years ago when I was driving home from work. I was driving a few friends home from work in my hometown here of Maple Ridge. There's this one stretch of low heat highway locally where at night there's always policemen hiding and waiting to give out like speeding tickets or distracted driving tickets. So the speed limit there is 50, and I remember making a comment to my friends like, oh, there's always cops up here. You gotta set your cruise control to 60. I will admit I set it to 60 when the speed limit was 50. In Canada, you can have like sort of a reasonable expectation that you can go 10 kilometers an hour over the speed limit without getting pulled over. I'm not suggesting that's the right thing to be doing, but in the interest of total honesty, it's what I was doing. And then sure enough, the cops, you see the lights go up, and the guy did in fact pull me over. He comes up and he asks, do you know why I'm pulling you over? And I said, no, why? And he said, I have you clocked on my radar gun at 101 kilometers an hour. Now, it should have been plainly obvious for this police officer, just by looking at me, with his own eyes, that I was doing nowhere close to that speed. So I normally don't argue with police officers. I make it a rule to not argue with police officers, but I had to in this instance because I was afraid of getting my a big ticket or getting my car impounded. So I told him no, I was going absolutely nowhere near 101. I was just nowhere near that. And so he says are you calling me a liar? And I had to think on my feet on that one because I was getting a little stressed now, because you don't want to call a cop a liar to his face. So I said, no, not calling you a liar. I'm suggesting you may be misinformed. You may, I don't know if your radar gun's calibrated properly. I don't remember exactly what I said, but something to that effect. And that kind of only annoyed him further. And then he went back to his car. And so me and all of my friends are all in our work uniforms just going home from work, are very puzzled as to what's going on. So the officer comes back to my car and he says, I don't understand, if you're driving your friends home, why would you go, I have you clocked at 104? I always thought that was very interesting. Gave me two different speeds I was going. He said I was doing 101, and then he told me I was doing 104 the next time he came over. And I was like, no, like, I'm driving my friends home. I'm trying to get them home safe. I set my cruise control to make sure I wasn't going too fast. I don't understand what's going on here. And we actually went back and forth for a little while, and the interaction ended with him just kind of tossing my driver's license back into the car and letting me go. I did not, despite the back and forth I had with that police officer, I actually never got a ticket for that. Nor did I really deserve one. Unless he was willing to actually write me a ticket for doing 60 in a 50 zone, then whatever. Technically, that's against the law, but not 101. I wasn't doing 101. I wasn't doing 104. I wasn't doing more than double the speed limit as he was suggesting. Anyway, didn't get a ticket for that. I sort of was a little shocked and slightly, I mean, I don't know if shooken up is the right word, but like I was so just confused by the whole incident. Now, let's flash forward a little to story number 2, which is this past October when I was on tour in Alberta. The last Albertan gig of my tour was in Jasper, and I drove from Edmonton to Jasper about 3 or 4 hours to get there. And so the speed limit on that highway is 110. I'm very, very, very cautious when I'm driving, especially outside of British Columbia. Because outside of BC, I don't know how police behave. I don't know if police tolerate doing 10 over or what. So I'm usually that annoying guy driving in the right-hand lane with the cruise control set to the speed limit on the highway. And that's exactly what I was doing. I had my cruise set exactly to 110, which was the speed limit, or so I thought then. And I passed the police officer. Didn't really think anything of it, because I, in my own mind, was doing the speed limit. And the police officer threw their lights on and pulled me over. And I don't know, I just thought everything about this encounter was fishy. His first question off the bat was, have you ever driven this highway before? I said no. Now, I'm driving BC plates in Alberta. I said no. And he said, okay, well, I'm pulling you over because there's actually a sign back there. This is an 80 zone because we're near a town. And I was like, oh, that's odd. I'm sorry about that. I was watching the road. I could have sworn it was 110 the whole way. And he said, no. He said, are you following GPS? And I said, yeah. And he said, oh, well, there's your problem. GPS, they don't track fluctuations in speed limits properly all the time. So your GPS probably thought the speed limit was 110. I didn't even understand that statement when he first said that, because I was just using Google Maps on my phone, and then I realized he meant certain cars' GPS systems have a little icon that shows you what the speed limit is. So he thought I was using that as a speed limit, I guess, and that would have been wrong. And I was like, oh, okay, no, I don't know. And he was like, all right, well, I know you're new here and you've never driven this highway before, but that's no excuse for breaking the rules, so I have to give you this ticket. Because I was doing 110, actually I think the ticket read that I was doing 111 in what I perceived to be a 110 zone. But he said 111 in an 80 zone is actually excessive speeding, but I'm going to do you a favor and just give you a regular speeding ticket. And I was like, okay. But I actually didn't argue with this police officer too heavily, because there was that shadow of doubt that, you know what, even to this day, I'm not 100% sure. Maybe I missed the sign. I'm still kind of kicking myself that I didn't backtrack a few kilometers to see if there was a sign, but I just didn't want to run into the same cop again. I kept my eyes peeled on that drive for the rest of the drive over to Jasper. For the rest of the drive to Jasper, until we reached Jasper itself, every little town we passed through, the speed limit never dipped below 110 again. So one of two things happened there. Either I legitimately missed a sign saying it was 80 kilometers an hour, which is entirely possible, or he saw a BC plate and was like, this guy has no idea what the speed limit is. I can tell him whatever I think. I don't know. I can't explain the situation. I thought his questions were fishy. So whatever. But the thing that was really, really frustrating about that incident was that I don't usually talk money, but I was going to make $300 for that gig, and then the speeding ticket was $240. So I was like, oh, good. I'm not even going to be paid for this part of the tour. And they gave me a court date, which I was actually planning on fighting this ticket, but they gave me a court date that was in that tiny community in central Alberta in the middle of January. So we would have had to fly to Edmonton or Jasper and drive another hour or two in the dead of winter to fight the case. There's no way to go online and fight it that way. There's no way to set your own court date. There's no way to do it virtually. You have to show up in the court on the day they give you. You can't reschedule, or you are guilty, which I also never thought was fair. But anyway, those are two interactions with police officers where I felt the police officers were possibly in the wrong. And so after those incidents happened, I used to kind of feel every time I passed a police officer that like, oh, what, are you going to pull me over too? But here's a very important point I have to make here. And it's in regards to my white privilege. While I've always had a little feeling that cops may pull me over, I have never one time in my life ever felt physically threatened by a police officer. This is why, in that first encounter I told you about, I even felt comfortable arguing with the police officer a little bit, because I felt that I was within my rights and that there was just no reasonable reason that I would get arrested or touched at all by a police officer for arguing a ticket where I felt I didn't deserve to receive. And it's not until I'm reevaluating this situation now that I realize that is a privilege I have as a white person. The ability to argue your innocence with a police officer in any capacity is pretty much exclusively a white right. I have always assumed that, that's one of your rights as a citizen. It should be inalienable. I now know it's not. It's not. And with the thing I mentioned earlier about how I always feel like police officers may pull me over, I can't imagine how it must feel for people of color in Canada and the United States and around the world to constantly feel like they have a target on their back, not only for being questioned and being pulled over, but being arrested. I've been watching so many testimonials online from people of color describing just many of their horrible experiences with law enforcement and how people have been just, removed from their homes, made to lay on the ground with handcuffs on, pushed to the ground, manhandled. Just, it's horrible. And of course, the many situations where people of color have just been killed by police officers for doing nothing wrong. But yeah, I thought about my own slight discomfort around police officers and just imagine how much it would be magnified were I a person of color. And it must be so debilitating on a daily basis. There must be a little bit of fear that goes through you as a person of color anytime you drive past a police cruiser or walk past an armed police officer. I can't even fully put into words how my white privilege equates to these situations, because I've never lived my life through any other lens than one of white privilege. But I'm slowly starting to think more and more about it and starting to realize, as the whole world has realized around us, that we need change. And I commend the Minneapolis Town Council. I was reading that I think 9 of the 13 councilors in Minneapolis have pledged that they are going to defund and really dismantle the police force and rebuild it from the ground up. And defunding the police, just remember, when you scroll through these posts about defunding the police and you feel like they're wrong, they're not saying that we want to live in a world without police. They're saying we want to live in a world where we've really thought through the role of our local police forces. I'm not an expert on any of the things I've just mentioned, let me say that. I am just sort of freeform sharing with you some of my own thoughts. Feel free to let me know in the comments where I've been, what you agree with what I've said, and where maybe I've been misinformed, because I'm just like you guys. I'm watching the news like you are and just sort of trying to get a handle on what's going on in the world. Thank you for watching this video. Like I said, I'm going to be back to my usual content in the next video. I'm going to put some links in the description for how you can take action on the issues that I've mentioned. And thank you so much for watching this video. I'm going to catch you again real soon.